And I saw a friend of mine that does podcasts. He has a podcast of his own. He said, you should always introduce your guest. Don't make them introduce themselves. And I was like, well, I can't hold that much information. Like otherwise I'd have to have a little piece of paper. I'd have to read it off my phone. And I don't know. I might get to that at some point, but I just can't.
It's just your thing.
Yeah. Tell us who you are and what you do. Yeah. I don't know.
I'm fine with it.
I think it's okay.
I got over it.
So welcome back to the As Told by You podcast. Today we have got Brian Cole on here, and want to just kind of talk to him about what's going on. So Brian, introduce yourself and tell us what you do.
Yeah, my name's Brian Cole. I'm the owner of Columbia Food Tours, Soda City Tours, as well as Red Maple Events, which includes two festivals, the South Carolina Pimento Cheese Festival and the Columbia Shrimp and Grits Festival.
Nice. I do like shrimp and grits. I got to a point with doing events and weddings for so long that I got to a shrimp and grits top. It was like I can't eat shrimp and grits anymore because I just had them at too many weddings and stuff like that. But I'm getting back to it.
Yeah,
I'm getting back to it.
Yeah.
So
that was kind of the inspiration, was just enjoying good food and
yeah.
So you're a foodie at heart?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Bill's a foodie too.
Yeah. So how did you get to this point? What made you decide? Hey, let's do a food tour.
So back 13, 14 years ago, before my wife and I had children, we loved going on our little weekend getaway trips. And we went up to Asheville, and they had just got this thing called a food tour. And we went on it. And, actually, before we went on it, my wife comes to me and she says, hey, there's this thing called a food tour. And I was like, what's a food tour? And she goes, well, I don't really know. And I said, well, I like food. I like tours. That sounds like something I would enjoy.
Yeah.
Do you get a little history with it?
Exactly. And so we went on the tour. We had an absolutely amazing time. And my two passions in life are food and history. And so it's a great way to be able to merge those two things that I enjoy together.
Yeah. Nice.
And then you came back and you said, hey, I want to do this.
In Columbia.
In Columbia?
Well,
does that happen that fast?
There's a whole story about that. That's my wife and I have always been entrepreneurial people. We've decided that once we came back to Columbia, we're like, Columbia doesn't have one yet. All these cities across the country are getting food tours at this time. Let's start a food tour, and it was quite a challenge to basically get to the point from idea to actually running food tours. So
how long did it take?
It took about 2 years.
Okay.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Man, that's a labor of love right there.
Yeah. So I would go and I would meet with all these restaurant owners, and which was probably the hardest part actually, is just getting in front of the right people. Because you walk into a restaurant without an appointment and you say, hey, I want to speak to the owner. Well, is there a problem? No. And I think these hostesses and people in the front are kind of trained to like
the gatekeep.
Yeah. Like, well, I'm sorry, but he's busy. Well, isn't that him over there? And just getting in front of the owner was the hard part. But then you'd have to go in and you'd sell them on the idea of, okay, this is what I want to do. And all they could hear in their minds were, okay, you want to bring a bunch of people in here, and then you want to eat, and then you want to leave without the check, And I'm like, well, yes, kind of. And so to be able to get enough great restaurants to kind of buy into the idea of what we were doing was very challenging.
Yeah. Sure. So I have a lot of questions, but I would say that the number one thing is that once you're in the restaurant circle in Columbia, you're in. Right, everybody knows everybody. Everybody used to work with everybody.
Sure,
it's a tight circle. It's not like Charleston or something like that where you have rival restaurant gangs that fight each other in the streets. It's like we have a family of restaurant people here that all know each other pretty well. Is that what you experience with it?
Absolutely. I mean, when I go into a restaurant on the food tour, I'll see somebody in there and I'll kind of look at them and I'm like, you don't belong in here. You belong in the restaurant that we go to over here. And They're like, no, I just switched, And so it's almost difficult sometimes where you're keeping track of who's working at what restaurant. And when they come up to you in a different uniform, you're like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. But yeah, and it's kind of the same thing as well when I was starting the food tour and I was walking around to the owners, the biggest I guess, boon to what I was doing was I got one owner particularly that signed on, and I think you know him, Christian at Bourbon.
Yep.
And I met with him, and he said, that's some of the best advertising I've ever seen. And he's signed on with me, and then all I had to do was walk around all the restaurants. And I said, "Well,
So
Christian's doing it."
Yep.
And
Right.
and then
Well,
they
and
said, "Okay, well,
he's the one too. I mean, if there's, I mean, maybe Scott Middleton or there's like a couple of them that you could get that would be up at that level, but Christian's definitely the one that you would say, you know, if Christian's doing it, you should do it too."
And that was the number one thing I think that helped my case was when after I met with him, I had that opportunity to just say, well, Christian's doing it, and because all of them were kind of leery, they're like, well, who's doing it, you know, like who's a part of this? And once I said Christian's name, they were all like, okay, yeah, we're doing it.
And I'll tell you, my wife took your tour a couple years ago. I think we were trying to think it was probably 3 years ago, and her and her high school friends did it, and it was Villatronco and Bourbon and I don't know. I guess it was similar to what's going on now, but she still talks about it. She still tells people about this tour that she went on, and we have gone back to those restaurants for dinner and stuff like that because of the food tour. Mm-hmm. We just went to eat at Villatronco in the fall because of her going on the food tour.
Are the restaurants paying to be part of the food tour?
No, they don't pay me. In fact, I actually do reimburse them a little bit for the cost of food. I don't pay menu price for anything, but I'll give them a little bit just for the trouble of, you know, not having to provide, you know, stuff out of their pocket. But it's kind of a win-win for everybody. You know, my guests have a great time. You know, I get to make a living, and the restaurants get this wonderful form of advertising that they really don't have to pay anything for. So it is free to them to be on the tour.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
so
cool.
Is the food tour seasonal, or is it all year long, every day you're having a tour?
If the restaurants are open, we're running tours. Typically, our tours run on Saturdays, and I've been running tours for 10 years now. I've actually been in the company for 12 years, but we've been running tours for 10, and you know, almost all the restaurants I've had absolutely love it. They see the benefit of being on the tour since people coming back and it's
Do you have different tours? Like this is a Southern barbecue tour and this is a fish tour or seafood tour. Do you have broken it down that way, or is it just one tour? Here's the 5 restaurants that are on the tour right now.
Well, my main food tour is kind of a one tour, and now I have about 10 different restaurant partners, and typically we'll go to 5 or 6 restaurants. So there'll be some rotation involved as to, you know, you come on the tour this Saturday, next Saturday's tour might be 1 or 2 of the same places, and that's it. But then also what I appreciate, because again, I've been doing this tour for 10 years, the restaurants also change what they serve. You know, so typically speaking, if we go into a place, I tell my guests I have no idea what we're going to be having that day. It could, I mean, it's a total surprise. In fact, Bourbon, the chefs at Bourbon, a lot of time will actually use the tour to go as an opportunity to go off menu for us.
Oh, and they'll try something new.
Exactly, trying out
cool.
new things and different things like that.
So it's not a progressive dinner where you're having an appetizer at the first place and a dessert at the last place. It's could be anything.
Correct. So when we walk in, I tell them how many and what time will be there, and the rest is up to them. So some of them will supply alcohol. Some of them will supply, you know, I typically like to start off at a coffee shop because, you know, I want a little caffeine boost to get the tour going. But other than that, you know, that's the only direction they get. I tell them to do whatever you think is going to sell your restaurant the best to everyone, to all of my guests. And the whole idea is they're going to dinner somewhere that weekend if they're from out of town, and it needs to be one of the stops that's on my tour.
Well, that was one of my questions: is who takes these tours? Is this locals taking the tour, or is it like people here for Fort Jackson or for USC, or like they're trying to get a feel for it?
I mean, it's typically about 50-50.
Really?
I start out the tour and ask, you know, who's local, who's out of town, and I'll have tours where it's all out of town or all local, but typically I see about a 50-50 mixture from people from out of town and local. When I say local, I mean even like something like Augusta, you know, they come in because it's a quick little, you know, day trip, and you know, they want to get into the city and, you know, and do something fun, and Columbia is kind of that closest option for them. So, you know, it really is about 50-50, which is good because you get the touristy, more, people from out of town, they typically go back within a couple of days. They're there for only a certain amount of time. But then the locals, you're building, hopefully lifelong customers.
Yeah.
How many people do you host at a time?
So we run from anywhere from 6 to 20 people. So I tell the restaurants, if we don't have 6, it's not really worth anyone's time. But we don't usually have that problem. I think in 10 years of running tours, I might have had to cancel one just for not having enough people. But yet we cap it at 20 because y'all been to probably Bourbon. You get more than
not a big place.
More than that. You get going in there, and we're taking up the entire place. We try to be respectful.
Well, we had Christian on the podcast in the fall, and we talked to him about the size of his restaurants. He doesn't open big restaurants. He almost always keeps the seating under control. And it's makes it a very unique experience to be able to go in there with other people. And my primary experience with food tours has been Savannah. So we have done, I think we've done 2 food tours in Savannah. And what I love about it is you find those places that you might have seen, you might have driven past, but wouldn't, never thought to go in there. How do you choose kind of what to introduce people to in Columbia?
Okay, so there's really 2 main criteria for my food tour. One is it's got to be something that's locally owned, something that you can't go to any city to get for obvious reasons. We like to be local. And then the number 2 is I have to like it. It's hard for me to sell to a whole bunch of people, oh, this is an amazing place, when I'm sitting there thinking in the back of my mind, like,
it's not that good.
Not so much. So I have to enjoy it, for whatever reason, typically I like for that reason to be the food. But, and other than that, like it has to be, for my main food tour, it has to be within walking distance.
Right.
Now, a couple of minutes ago, you asked about the tours that I offer. So about a year ago, so something I've been wanting to do for about 5 or 6 years is to start a mobile food tour.
Well, that's what I was like, you get on a bus and then they pull the bus up, you get out, you eat, you get on the bus and keep going.
One of the things about Columbia is it's very districted, right? So if you're on Main Street, it's not very easy to get from Main Street to 5 Points without a bus.
Correct.
Right. Yeah.
So we bought a shuttle bus about a year ago, and right now I'm currently operating historical bus tours with my shuttle bus, and I also during the Christmas season do Christmas light tours. But the reason I purchased that bus is so that I can start offering mobile food tours, and then that's kind of the ultimate goal. Who's got the best barbecue in Columbia? Well, we're going to go and find out. Different things like that we can start offering.
And then you can go to Duke's, or you can go to Heights, or you can go to, whatever.
I also think of it as like you can get on the food shuttle bus and see who has the best fast food.
Yeah.
It's fast food tour. It's going to be a little cheaper this week, but
that's right.
Yeah. Well, also one of the ideas I have is buying one of those spinning wheels, and putting it on the bus and like literally just like, all right,
where are we going?
Where are we going now? We're going to spin that wheel and we're going to find out, me and you together.
So basically you have figured out a way to eat dinner for free at the best restaurants every single night.
Well, don't tell anybody.
That is awesome.
And then welcome you in. They're like, oh, come back. Come back.
I tell everybody, it's the best job I've ever had. I love history. I love food. I get to talk about history while I'm eating. And I get to eat for free. And
so do you host every tour, or do you have like 2 or 3 other guides that go through it so you don't have to do it every single day?
So, well, our tours mostly are on Saturdays. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, typically, like, I'll have big companies that will rent my tour for private events that I might be able to do on a Tuesday afternoon or something like that. But yeah, I'm the only one that I think in the history of my company has ever actually led a tour. Not that there's not been plenty of applicants, but what I worry about though is because you can go around and look at other food tours around the country, and when you start hiring people that don't care as much about your company as you do, that's when your reviews start suffering.
The quality goes down a little bit. Yeah.
Because TripAdvisor and Google, I mean, we're almost all 5 stars. And I think it's just because that I care more than somebody I'm paying an hourly rate to would care about my business.
Yeah.
So.
Well, and I know when we've booked tours out of town, that's a big deal. big part of it is the reviews and what people say about it,
Sure.
stuff like that. But it is a very cool feeling to walk into a restaurant and everything's set out for you, and you sit down, and I'm sure that's how it works. I don't know, but like you sit down, you eat your thing, and then they're like, all right, well, thank you very much, and we get up and take off.
Yeah. And it's
buy alcohol if you want, but like otherwise you just get to walk out.
Well, and I try my best to also not just make it where we eat and leave. Like we want to learn something.
Yeah.
This is the restaurant's opportunity to, to tell us about them.
Yeah.
Like what do you do well? Tell us your story. And so that's part of to me, the excitement of the tour is, okay, how often does the chef come out to you, and just chit chat when you're having dinner at the restaurant? Hopefully they do, but not all the time, and they don't want to spend a ton of time because they want to be back there in the back cooking.
Yeah.
And they field questions, and we go to Hampton Street Vineyard, and Jonathan, I don't know if you know Jonathan at Hampton Street, but he's probably one of the best wine guys in Colombia,
Right.
and so I'll make it a point, like, hey, if y'all ever wanted to know anything about wine,
Here's your guy.
this is your time
Yeah.
to find out,
Right.
And so being able to have those conversations on the tour is also something that I think people really enjoy.
We had an anniversary dinner at Hampton Street a couple of years ago, probably that year, or maybe right after that, and I had water buffalo. Never had water buffalo. There's apparently a place outside of Atlanta that breeds water buffaloes for meat, and so I had a water buffalo steak. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I love places like that where it's a tiny little place. It's like it's got a lot of character and stuff like that. I noticed that Taco Sushi was on your tour, and that's a really interesting building. So I imagine there's a lot of history in that piece of it.
That particular building, it's the Arcade Mall, and it's
Yeah.
probably my favorite building in Colombia. So to be able to have a restaurant that's actually in that building, so
Yeah.
I can talk about the building as well as the restaurant, is kind of a win-win for me.
Right. But not just the underground, but the fact that it was built outside and then closed in, it looks, so.
Were you in the restaurant industry before this, or this was just something that?
No,
Never been in the restaurant industry before?
I've worked in I guess I'll call it a fast food pizza place when I was a kid, basically,
Yeah.
16, 17 years old. But other than that, I have no experience in the restaurant business. And that's one of the most common questions I get on the food tour is like, oh, so are you a chef? And I'm like, well, let me put it this way. I entered my church's chili cook-off one year, and I took last place.
Right.
Okay. So, but I like to defend myself though, and it's because it was actually a decent chili. I just burnt it when I reheated it. But I tried, and then I went over to the little placard where you had to describe the chili, and I wrote "smoky" on it, but it didn't fool anybody.
Yeah, smoky's different than burnt. Yeah. That's they'll tell you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Char is a thing. You can get away with char, but you have to.
Yeah.
You have to
Char chili.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to be prepared for that. So I know you operate festivals as well. So talk about that a little bit, and how does the food tour lead to you running a festival?
Sure. So, my first festival was the Columbia Shrimp and Grits Festival, and this is the 10th year of that festival, and that actually happened because one of my restaurant partners at the time, they since closed down. They had the best shrimp and grits. Oh my goodness!
Who was that?
So it was the restaurant that was inside of the Marriott Hotel.
Oh,
of all
okay.
places you would never expect to get good food. But the guy who was the food and beverage director there at the time, he set the menu, and he's like, no, we're doing a top-notch restaurant here. And it stinks too, because that was always my special event location. 'Cause,
Yeah.
like, if it's Valentine's Day, you walk in there and there'd be nobody in there. And it was some of the best food you ever had. And
Not good for the restaurant. Good for the people.
oh
eating
yeah,
it,
good for me,
but not
because
good
like
for the
I could walk
restaurant.
in
Yeah.
anytime, Easter Sunday or Mother's Day, and
Yeah.
and boom, great food.
Right.
Well, I was eating a bowl of shrimp and grits there, and I just kind of had this revelation, like, hey, the guy was telling me that they were already award-winning shrimp and grits, and I said, well, what makes them award-winning? He said, well, we won the Jekyll Island Shrimp and Grits Festival, and I said, well, we need to have one of those here in Columbia.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I started it 10 years ago, and they won for the first several years
Right.
until the restaurant shut down, and then once they shut down, now it's kind of been a little bit more fair competition, I'd say. But no, it's really an amazing night. it's kind of an excuse for me to eat shrimp and grits for 3 hours.
Yeah. Well, Blue Marlin's always famous for their shrimp and grits, and so there's like a couple restaurants in town that do some pretty heavy duty shrimp and grits. So.
Well, according to all of the restaurants, all of them are the best.
Right.
So, but there can't be,
the best,
100
yeah.
best.
That's
shrimp
why
and
we must
grits.
go to the festival.
That's right.
Well, we will tell you for sure.
And the festival is great too because you might go to a restaurant and get a certain type of shrimp and grits. Well, one of the awards that we give out in the festival is the best creative shrimp and grits. So some of the chefs say I'm going after that one. Mm-hmm. And so we have all sorts of just different things that you probably never ever see.
They just get weird with it, right?
Yeah. So one year the guy that won did a shrimp and grits waffle. It was like he took the grits and he was somehow able to make it into kind of a waffle mix consistency, and he was back there making waffles, and it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was. And then another. In fact, I can't remember if it's the same guy or not, but another guy brought in these big prawns, these jumbo shrimp. And then he took the grits and actually injected the grits into the shrimp, and then wrapped it in bacon and fry. And oh man, I'm telling you, like there's some amazing things.
I got to come to this.
So
yeah, because that sounds like something I would really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. When is the Shrimp and Grits Festival?
So it's always in June. This year it's on June 21st. It's a Saturday night.
Cool.
But I will tell you and anyone that sees is watching. Tickets go on sale March 1st, and they go fast.
Okay.
So it is inside because I am not crazy enough to have an outside shrimp and grits festival in June.
Yeah. Apparently
and-
it's hot. I don't know.
Yeah,
Did you guys know that?
and that's
Yeah.
the last thing I want to eat outside in the heat.
Yeah.
So
Is shrimp and grits,
so
yeah.
it is inside. So people always complain that the tickets are sold out quickly. So they go on sale March 1st, just so everybody is aware.
Okay.
And it is first come, first served until we hit the capacity for the room.
Where do you have it usually?
So it's at Seawells.
Oh, it's Seawells.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
jumped around over the years, but it's
Nice.
found a home at Seawells, which has been really, really good for us.
That's awesome. And you got the Pimento Cheese Festival coming up soon. What is that about?
So that's coming up on March 29th, and again, it's kind of a way to celebrate pimento cheese. We've been wanting to branch out into another festival after the success of the Shrimp and Grits Festival, but we wanted to have a festival that will be outdoors that can accommodate a large amount of people, and we started looking at what foods might be underrepresented, and we kind of realized, hey, there's really not a whole lot for pimento cheese, and that's such a staple for South Carolina and the Midlands, and why not have a festival that celebrates that dish? And that will be a free event,
Nice.
and it will be at the at Saluda Shoals.
Okay. Makes me think of DePrado's. Like as soon as you say pimento cheese in Columbia, it makes me think of DePrado's and the pita tips that you dip into the pimento cheese. The fascinating thing to me is it seems like you just go, I want to do this thing, and then you just like go do the thing. Talk about that motivation for starting the food tour, but then also like whatever it seems
Making
like
it work.
Yeah, whatever else you decide to do, you're just going to go do. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's because I have an amazing wife. First off,
okay,
because
sure.
she, I'll come up with some crazy idea, and then she'll tell me either you're insane, you're not doing that, or that's a great idea, and let's make it work. And she's kind of the one that turns these visions into realities.
Okay.
So. With the festival, like I'll get up and I'll kind of host it and talk, but she's the one that does all the behind the scenes work and schedules everything and books it and really makes things go, So, we come up with ideas, but she's told me no more businesses for a while, she's kind of cut me off on that.
Right.
So, it's really just a testament to how hard she works at home. Like if I always joke with people that, you send an email. In fact, she sent the email to you at 2:00 in the morning.
Yep.
And she probably put my name on it too.
Right.
But
she replied to the post. She's the one that said my husband needs to do this.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
so not that I need to do it, but my husband needs to do it.
Yeah, so I'm the go out and do things, and she's the actually make them happen behind the scenes person. So
Nice.
we work very well together.
That's a great combination.
Yes.
And I think what happens with a lot of people too is that they have these ideas, but they don't put that execution piece on getting that idea to actually work.
Yeah.
And that's a heavy element to it.
Well, somebody told me one time, they said a dream is a dream until you make it a reality. So I mean, like, you actually have to do something, or otherwise it's always just going to be a dream. You have to have a plan, and if you don't, nothing's ever going to happen. You can't expect things to fall into your lap, and you got to go out and get it and start it, and if it fails, it fails, but at least you tried. So that's kind of our philosophy.
Well, and I love the integrating history into the food tour too. I think that's a really cool element, because probably, I don't know about you, but like, there's probably a lot of people that don't know a lot of the history of Columbia. The kind of top level famous stuff, but there's probably a lot of stuff like the arcade mall.
Sure.
I only found out about the arcade mall because I was working with Historic Columbia on something, and they were talking about that building and the way that it was all put together. And a lot of that stuff is just the coolest stuff, and especially you should know this about your hometown.
Yeah. And the food tour, it primarily focuses on food, and then we do a little bit of history. I've also operated what I call the Nibbles and Narrative tour, which is kind of the reverse. It's a little bit of food, and it's very heavily history focused, but that's kind of more on a, somebody that maybe they special request, I guess. But then that's ultimately when I started the bus tours. I was like, my pet project is going to be the history tours, because I don't get to talk enough about history on my food tour, and that's what I really enjoy. So,
what's your primary form of marketing for all of the different tours and festivals?
Well, the food tour, when we first started it and started operating tours 10 years ago, it was so hard. We had, nobody even knew what a food tour was. And so what we actually ended up having to do was, we'd go to our friends and we'd say, okay, we're having a food tour this Saturday.
Y'all come on it.
Come on it. And you have to do two things. You have to go back within a week. You have to go back and you have to eat at one of the restaurants and say, hey, I heard about this place from the food tour, so that they could see the results from it. And then the other thing was you had to go on and give me a review.
Right.
And so I did that for about a month, and then the news stations caught wind. They all did stories, and then it kind of blew up. It really blew up until about COVID, and then it kind of had to start all over again.
Yeah.
But I would say most of my business comes from TripAdvisor, Google, and word of mouth.
That's interesting. Well, and that's a cool thing about a food tour like that, is that you can get that direct ROI and all that stuff. So do you do social media at all? Do you do any of that stuff? Because I would figure that that's a good spot for it.
Yeah, primarily on Facebook. I mean, we'll do like boost posts and just different things like that if we got events. And it's a little bit more tricky with the starting the festivals. The Shrimp and Grits Festival. Now last year we did zero advertising for it, because I mean it sells out a month in advance. I mean, why advertise? Yeah, we can only fit so many people, and it's going to sell out.
Yep.
So we didn't feel like we need to. But now the Pimento cheese, this will be the first annual. So we've been more heavily focused on and we're trying to make it a statewide event as well. So it's the South Carolina Pimento Cheese Festival. So we've been advertising on Facebook in Charleston and Greenville and Myrtle Beach, and we're going to hopefully get some radio ads and things like that together, and
nice.
Put together a whole campaign for it. But we'll see.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love big swings, and it sounds like you're taking some big swings and you're hitting as much as anything. What's next? What do you? I mean, Kristen's listening. Don't listen to this. But what's next? What's after this?
I really want to focus primarily back on my my history, or not my history, my bus food tours, because I've gone out and I've tried to do some preliminary work on it, but I just haven't really had the time to focus on making that a reality. And my wife likes to remind me I have a bus payment every month to make.
Yep.
And so I have to make money with that thing. So I do okay with it so far, but being able to operate those mobile food tours would actually bring that to the next level.
You know what I would love to do that I've not done is Decker Boulevard apparently has a bunch of world restaurants, Asian restaurants and different things. I would love to just go out to Decker Boulevard and hit 3 or 4 of those places. There's apparently one of the best Korean restaurants in the city is on Decker Boulevard. We've never been out there because we live in Irmo, so it's might as well be, a different state. You know,
well, I'm in Lexington, so I'm right there with you.
Yeah.
Decker's quite a ways away.
I know,
and it's really hard.
It would be like going to a different.
I know it would be going to another country,
especially when it's midnight on a Saturday night. You never know what's going to happen on Decker Boulevard. Live PD.
That's right. But I think that kind of thing would be very interesting. The barbecue idea is a really good one too.
Yeah, I would love to get some more international options on my food tour. The only issue we have is that I find that if somebody's not an English first speaking person, I think there's a little bit of a barrier to understand what I'm trying to do, and so I've not really been successful in crossing that barrier yet.
Right.
Because I've had a few places on Main Street and around town that I've tried to partner with, and it's just been really hard to get over that concept of what I'm trying to do with somebody who's maybe not a native English speaker.
Interesting. Yeah, we with the last food tour we went on in Savannah, the last stop was Paula Deen's. Was the what is that called? Oh goodness, anyway, I can't remember the name of it. It's Paula Deen's restaurant, and so half of our food tour was Northerners who were, this was in like late November. They were coming down from the north, and it was 70 degrees outside, and we were walking around Savannah in short sleeve shirts, and they were like, "Oh my God, Southern fried chicken!"
It's probably Our Lady and Sons.
Our Lady and Sons. That's right. That's what it was.
You got to get in line early for that.
Yeah, that's right. But we walked in, got up to the 3rd floor. They had a whole dining room set out for us, and they brought an entire fried chicken and set it, like all the pieces and collard greens and mac and cheese, and that was our last stop on that tour. I thought, this is pretty cool. Like I've been to her restaurant once, and it was fine. It's good Southern cooking, but it's like what my grandma used to make after church. It's not that interesting.
Right.
But like if you're from Connecticut and you've never had, Southern cooking, like that is such an interesting element to something like that you wouldn't get a place at Our Lady and Sons if you didn't prepare for it, but you can just walk in on the food tour, which I think is very cool.
Right.
That is a big element of it. I was trying to think. There was another. So I love also the idea of going to, West Columbia and kind of what's happening in West Columbia with revitalization over there right now, and stuff areas that you can't walk to.
Right.
As Bull Street starts to add more restaurants, Tupelo Honey just opened in Bull Street, and so that would be cool. I don't guess that's local. But
well, they're kind of a regional chain, So in fact, we're probably going to be partnering with them on some stuff. We've already had some conversation with them, and they're good people and great food. I don't know if you've had a chance to check it out yet, but
I haven't eaten at the one here. I've had the one in Asheville and the one in Charlotte, but I haven't eaten at the one here. But I'm interested in it. I have loved it so far. The 2 times that I've eaten there, it's been great. So, and I'm really interested in the Shrimp and Grits Festival. I think I'm gonna have to talk to Mary about that when I get home. Like, look, we're gonna have to probably go to this.
Yeah.
One of the best meals I've ever had anywhere. And I've been to Italy and Greece, and I've had great meals there. With Shrimp and Grits in New Orleans. We went to a place in New Orleans called La Petite Grocery, and they had a very basic menu, roasted chicken and grilled fish and shrimp and grits and a couple of things. It was incredible. It was like one of those things where you eat it and you just go, I don't want to leave this place because I don't want to forget how this felt to eat this meal. Just unbelievable. So I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, I kind of have a theory that the sketchier the place looks on the outside, the better the food's going to be.
Right. So that's right. You just when you go in, you go, oh, I'm not sure about this place.
Well, my wife one year took me. We went to Myrtle Beach. Again before kids, we used to go. Before the kids were in school, we used to go to Myrtle Beach on a trip every year. After the kids had after regular school age kids had gone back to school. And so there'd be nobody down there, because everybody's gone back to school. And she said, we're going to try out the seafood place. And I'm thinking, okay, someplace, like one of the big, things that everybody does toward. And she's like, no. And we drive. And we drive, and all of a sudden we're in North Carolina.
Oh.
And she pulls over, and like it's the sketchiest looking place. I can't remember if it was a gas station, but like you walked in, and there's like 3 tables.
Yeah.
Like a counter with seafood, and then a bunch of like groceries, and we're like, this is not a restaurant. This is. And she's like, no, you order it, and then they cook whatever you pick out of the case. They cook it however you want.
Oh yeah.
And it was one of the best meals ever.
Isn't that the coolest thing when you can find something like that? My wife and I were in Mexico many years ago, and in Cozumel, and we rented a Jeep to drive around the island, and got around the back end of the island, and there was a little sign on a piece of plywood that just said Restaurante. That was painted on the sign, and an arrow pointing up the hill. Yeah. And so we pulled the Jeep over, and we walked up the little path, and there's this little place on the beach. It's this lean-to, and a hot stone in the back, where they cooked everything, and chickens and dogs and iguanas running around all over the place, and like 4 tables, and the menu's written out in marker on another piece of plywood. And this lady was making tortillas by hand and cooking them on the hot stove, on the hot rock at the back of the thing. And it was amazing. It was one of those things where you just go, I cannot believe food can be this good. And that was a long time. It was 15 years ago. I still remember that meal. And obviously it can't be there anymore, but like places like that have to exist out there, So I love that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just walking in a place, you go, this is sketchy, but it's, it turns out to be an incredible meal, And I love
one of the
that.
things on the food tour. We don't go to any sketchy places. Okay, so just let me clarify
now that we're talking about this so much.
But
yeah.
one of the great things about the food tour is that you get things sometimes on the tour that you would maybe never see on a menu and say, I'm going to order that. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget one of the most, I say, craziest things that we ever had. One time was at Bourbon. They, and I to this day, I still think the chef at the time did this on purpose, because he brought out this food, and it just looked like this piece of pot roast on, like some collard greens or some Papa John. I don't remember exactly what it was on, but people started eating it, and they're like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. Well, the chef waited a few minutes before he came out, and he comes out and he goes, he goes, actually, what you're eating is lamb's heart. Oh, and you could just see like the forks just stop. And then they're like, well, I've already eaten like 3/4 of it. It's really good. Right. So, and so to this day, I'm like, man, like that was one of the most incredible things I'd ever experienced. And you would have never thought that's what it was, or I never saw that on a menu and go like, yeah, that sounds good. I'm going to order that. And, but we got that experience because, it was just something that they just did that day.
Yeah, that's great. I love it when we can do that stuff. We just ate at the Hollow in the spring last year, and had elk steak, which was really good. So, it's I love experimenting with stuff like that.
Well,
Brian, not so much.
I love trying new restaurants. Yeah. Because I figure there's something on the menu I'll eat. Yeah. There's got to be something.
There's meat and bread and cheese somewhere on this menu.
That's right. Yeah. I'm looking forward to our 5 favorites.
Okay. Yeah. One. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, pursuant to my conversation, what's the favorite meal you've ever had?
Oh my goodness. Favorite meal that I've ever had. I'm probably going to go back to those shrimp and grits that I was eating at that restaurant in the Marriott that started the Shrimp and Grits Festival.
Nice.
Because, I mean, I would say that was a life-changing bowl of shrimp and grits.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. Inspired a whole festival that's been going for 10 years. That's pretty good. I wonder where that chef is now.
Last I heard, he's working in staffing.
Oh,
so
nice.
Not even in the restaurant business anymore.
Okay.
So
shifting gears, what's your favorite TV show?
So there's a lot of great shows, but the one that I've watched probably more than any other show is the show Frasier. Oh, I am a huge Frasier fan from back in the day.
Okay,
grew up with it.
That's very cool. I had an intention during COVID to watch all of Cheers and then watch all of Frasier just to like have the continuation, because there was such a gap, you know, when Frasier picked up, because the last season of Cheers leads into the first season of Frasier, because Frasier's going through his divorce with Lilith. Yeah, he's going.
Did you make it all the way through?
I didn't. No, I made it up to the. I made it up to when Diana left, and I just never did pick it up after that. You know, it's a lot. It's like 8 seasons. It's a huge show. So, that's awesome. Favorite movie?
Favorite movie? Oh wow, I don't watch a lot of movies.
Well, that's cool. I bet you don't have a lot of time with all these.
Well, I have a lot
festivals
of
going
children, so let me rephrase that. I don't watch a lot of movies that aren't animated.
Right.
So,
All right, what's your favorite Pixar movie?
So probably, I think Big Hero 6.
Oh,
So,
okay.
yeah, that's something that my boys and I really got into, and
Yeah.
we did all the little things that they did in the movie, and
Yeah.
so that one always kind of holds a special place in my heart.
Nice. I have seen that one. I can't tell you that I remember much about it, because it was when my daughter was into that Pixar period, and I would fall asleep in every movie, and but I could not stay awake. So, but I've heard it's great, so I have to check it back out. Favorite song?
Favorite song? I honestly, I listen to podcasts.
Okay, yeah. What about music genre? What's a genre that you like?
I really haven't listened to a lot of music in quite a few years. But when I was growing up, I was big into country, which is weird because I'm actually from northern Indiana, and that's not country music territory.
Right.
But I haven't. I mean, that's not something I've been into for a long time. I've actually been more into getting back into some of the classic songs that maybe I should have listened to when I was growing up, but I didn't. So, things like that. 90s and early 2000s rock, I would say.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome. And then last, favorite season?
Before I moved down here, I would have said summer.
Okay. Summer
but,
not here.
Yeah. It's unbearable here. So
it's what we get through every year.
I will go with fall just because you can't handle the pollen in spring. So fall is kind of going to be the big one for me.
Or South Carolina winter, which is like 77 like it is today. So that's not bad.
That's
right?
Yeah.
Feels like a gift. Yeah, it feels like you didn't earn it.
Yeah, but fall's nice though when we get a little glimpse of it.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, Brian, thank you so much for coming on, man. This was a great conversation.
Well, thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.